Thế ăn mấy cây xí cây ăn mấy cây.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Professor Jenny Bond, and this is being recorded. So if you watch another time, that's totally great. Yes, it is Lunar New Year. 1 in 4 people on the planet are actually celebrating the one of the biggest holidays on Earth. So if you don't know what Lunar New Year is, it's basically if Thanksgiving had a baby with Christmas, right? It's that big, okay? And as an anthropologist, I can tell you this is the largest right now human migration on Earth. So if you don't know, 25%, 1 in 4 people on Earth, I'm talking all over the world because a lot of people on not just ethnically Chinese, but definitely ethnically Chinese, but also Vietnamese, Koreans, Japanese, various Southeast Asian countries, they're all traveling back to their home, right? And so thank you so much. I'm going to share screen and I'm going to go over the meaning of Lunar New Year. It is such a wondrous event. So if you don't know, it's like so wondrous and it's just like such a great thing. But, I really want you guys to know about Lunar New Year, the food. If I can really share the food with you, right? So my talk will be on Lunar New Year's foods. Okay. And again, I'm the Asian American coordinator for Fresno State, and it's an honor to be here. So I should tell you this. I am just like this Chinese restaurant kid from Ferguson, Missouri, Belleville, Illinois. And I grew up there. Actually, I never saw anyone Asian my whole life until I hit high school when we moved to California. And so actually, Lunar New Year means so much to me because actually we worked every single day, 7 days a week. Pretty much I would say my parents worked 18 hours a day and we were just on survival mode. But man, we worked all the time. And the one time that my dad would close a Chinese restaurant, and I kind of like, Steve, I want to say it's like, I don't want to say Chinese, it's more like a hovel. It was actually we worked in a like a kind of an old gas station. So it's really tiny. So let's put restaurant in quotes, okay? More like a tiny thing. Well, the one day, and it was just one day, we closed. The whole year in Ferguson, Missouri was Chinese New Year. That was the only day. So that's how important it was. My parents were working hard, and so I had these deep memories of Chinese New Year because it was the one day that I got red envelopes. Red envelopes, they're called lycees, and you would get like money in it. And man, it was a good time. Now, I thought I'd be doing this presentation to younger adults, but we're all kids inside. We're all kids inside. So I'm imagining 7 year olds and 10 year olds. So I was going to crack some jokes for my elementary audience. All right, Stephen, can you unmute yourself and can you read our joke here? Or
Why couldn't the apple wish the orange a happy New Year's? She couldn't speak Mandarin.
all right, I know I got you 7 year olds rolling in the seats, rolling in the seats. Cha-ching. Okay. Let's do the second corn bar joke. All right, guys. Steven, can you read it for me?
Happy Chinese New Year's, or as they say in China, Happy New Year's.
All right. Well, that's my second cornball joke. Okay. All right. And can you do the third cornball joke? Start with the red first.
Messed up your New Year's resolutions already? Resolutions. Don't worry, there's still time for Lunar New Year's resolutions.
Yes, if you, I know the gym membership goes up during that time, and then,
Mm,
3 months in, it's you don't go to the gym again. Okay,
yeah.
so you know, all right. So now we're gonna start. We're going to start with the 10 things you didn't know about China. Some people call it Chinese New Year. Some people call it Lunar New Year. Some people call it Tet Festival. It depends on like where you are on Earth, right? So if we were at Cal State Fullerton, probably they'd be calling it Tet Festival. If we're at Cal State LA, Long Beach, they're calling it Chinese New Year. If it's got a Korean, which is back to Fullerton, it's a different name. So I'm going to go with the global name of Lunar New Year. All right. So, Stephen, I really want you to get into this history of food, right? We're from Central Valley, and I want to talk to you about how food is so important in Central Valley. And my God, we are considered the breadbasket of the world. We all the food in America is kind of and the world is kind of produced in Central Valley, right? So, like a little tidbit I like to talk about in terms of Central Valley is I really need you to look back at particularly I'm in Fresno filming this, right? And actually, there originally was like 400, 500 residents of Fresno. And unfortunately, of course, the original were Native Americans, your Colts, right? This is the people coming in. And out of the, I think, 400 or 500, there's only 200 of them were Chinese. And they're the ones who built the first building in Fresno, right? And that's something that most people don't know, this like invisible history of particularly Asian men, and they're very invisibilized, right? Now, something else that you didn't know about these men is that, you know what? You eat this food around, right? And guess, for Central Valley, it didn't look like Central Valley. It was all rocks. It was all like forests, right? Somebody had to remove those rocks and forests and make that ground habitable to actually be able to grow food. Now, raise your hand, Stephen. Who actually came to Central Valley and actually developed the land to make it agrible and actually brought their little seeds, their hard seeds from China to grow in this land? Who was this group, Stephen? Raise
Was it the Chinese men?
Yes, and you're correct. And unfortunately, they had a really tragic life. I'm gonna be honest. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Okay, number one, they did the railroad, right? And 90% of the workers who did the railroad, Pacific, look this up, Pacific Railroad, 90% of the workers were Chinese. And then if you look at the picture that showed like the joining of the East and West Railroad, not one Chinese person in that picture. Okay, now unfortunately, I was in Sonoma and I was walking around. It's beautiful wine country, right? But it showed Italian wines, a French chateau. Nobody talks about 90% of those original vines were developed by a one group. And Stephen, who were it? Who was it?
Was it the Chinese
That's
farmers?
correct. That is correct. And again, Stephen, it was the most tragic history. Remember, after they did the railroad, they got paid back by being run off the railroad, and they became farmers. And actually, after they developed all the farms in Fresno, the farmers actually, unfortunately, got together and said, "Hey, we're not going to let them have any land to ownership, and we're going to kick them off." And unfortunately, there's a lot of I don't want to talk about, but there's a lot of books on this on how things happen and I'm thinking for a crowd of younger kids, multiple things, mass things happen to them. So unfortunately, they were run out of Napa Valley, right? Even though they developed the 90% of the vines, right? And they are using Chinese techniques to actually, because in China also was very difficult to grow food, right? But they have this like history, right? They put it into land and we still feel their love. I was laughing because I was in Sonoma, not one mention of the Chinese. It was French and then I was thinking of our Governor Newsom. He was gotten into hot water because he had some dinner at French Laundry where he spent 13,000 on wine. Again, no one remembers this, right? So I want you to focus on our 10 things, right? Food is important. Food is everything. And I particularly if you're from Central Valley and Lunar New Year, it's so crucially important. Now, number one, you got to know food is a love language of Asians. they don't express themselves saying, I love you, you're wonderful. My parents have never told me they love me, but I know they love me because they always show me through service and also food. Okay. So now I think we should talk about the origin of Lunar New Year. Okay. Number one, it was actually 3,500 year or associated with the Shang dynasty. It's actually associated with ancestor worship and it's celebrated at the end of the harvest. Now, for instance, if you're having and it was so hard to live and survive. People, we really takes for granted, like all the things, all the advantages we have. Like 100 years ago, no one had hot water. Okay. But so everyone you had to cook and you had to actually grow your own food. And so a lot of people died because of not enough food. And so when you had food and you grew it, you would harvest it, you would celebrate. Yay! And that is the origin of Lunar New Year. And you did it after the kind of the farming, right? So again, it's like a really spiritual thing, right? And you also worship your ancestors who came before you that helped you in making these great accomplishments of food. Okay. Number two. Now, one thing I want to shape is a lot of people go to Chinese restaurants and they eat their, whatever, their dumplings, they eat their orange chicken, but they don't even know that actually it's like 10,000 year old and it has massive symbolism, right? It means more than the dumpling, right? It's a survival thing. But even for 10,000 years ago in China, it was a survival thing. Okay. All right. Take a look at our pictures. Oh my gosh. Now, I believe this looks familiar to you. Stephen, I believe it does. Okay. Noodles. You said noodles. Stephen, do you see anything that looks familiar to you?
I see. I think chicken,
Yes,
dumplings,
I
egg
believe.
rolls,
Yeah.
some rice,
Noodles? Noodles? Yeah. So,
noodles.
okay. So, do you see like the little, the little spring rolls? And do you see like the little spices?
Mm-hmm.
All righty. So then now you know how important this is because I'm going to tell you something that's well known in Asia. All these foods mean something important. Okay. Number one, now in the legend of the Spring Festival, there was a monster called Neon, right? And people used to hide their offerings, right? And they would have to give their food to this monster, right? Because if you give it to the ancestors and gods, you hope for the best for next year. Now, Stephen, this is the reason why there's like 100 birthday. When children are born in Asia, particularly East Asia, you don't have an age. You don't have an age because basically many of them perished, right? And so that's why you start the age at 100 days, right? Because pretty much, 9 out of 10 would not make it to 100 days. So so you're always praying, please, God, please let my baby hit 100 days, in the 9 out of 10 babies die, right? Then you actually give this to the gods. Oh, gods, please give. And again, they have there's like all these different gods, etc. And again, this is how that's one of the origins of Lunar New Year as well, right? These foods are offerings to God and asking them, please let my children survive, right? Most of them to survive. Okay. So again, huge things. Okay. Number one, this is a what? Steve, what is it?
It's a spring roll.
It's a spring roll. Now, have you had, or they can say egg roll. Have you had this before?
Yes.
Okay. So it's called Chun Wan, right? I don't speak Mandarin. But anyway, if you look at it, right, it is actually very important. Okay. Now I know you're thinking, oh, I've had 1,000 egg rolls, and Steve and I believe I've had 1,000 egg rolls. We've both had 2,000 egg rolls, right? And I would, if the little kids are here, I'd be like, who's had egg rolls? All the hands go up, right? And actually, egg rolls are very similar to golden bars. Okay. So 5,000 years ago, there was no money, right? Money was actually currency of gold, right? Silver and gold, silver and gold. And actually, the Chinese, they have this like very intense obsession with silver and gold because number one, it's like their like money system, but two, they think it has some spiritual value, right? Remember we started this talk and we're saying your food also is the shape, right? And the sound of the food. Well, the shape, well, what do you think gold bars were shaped like?
Spring rolls.
Yeah, spring rolls. Yes. So when you, Stephen, are in China or Hong Kong and you go off and you have a meal and you order, hey, can I have some spring rolls? it's not just meaning that you're ordering spring. No, no, Mr. Steven. You know what's saying? I want you to have good health. I want you to be rich. I want you to survive. Because remember that all the babies are dying, people are starving. You got to think back, like what these. So eating this is not just eating spring rolls, right? It's eating happiness with your friends, but also you're trying to say, I hope you have some gold bars. I hope you, and they look just like this, like, made of gold, of course. Okay. All right. Now another thing, it's called jiaozhi. And let's Stephen, have you had this thing called dumplings before?
Yeah, I have.
All right, you've had $1,000, I've had $1,000. We've had dumplings. But did you know dumplings or jiaozhi? Did you know that they also look like take a look at this thing on the below. What does it look like?
It's some. It looks like it's made out of gold. I'm not sure though.
It's a gold dumpling. So actually, this is the original. So back in the day, Stephen, all the kings and queens, they're wealthy. They're very wealthy. In fact, they had chests and chests of these golden bars, right? These golden things, right? Which is like, of course, the commoners, they all perished. They had to run for their life, etc., right? But the wealthy, they had these gold bars. And like, if you watch like Korean period pieces or Japanese period pieces or Chinese period pieces, you'll see people pay each other, right? And they'll pay each other with something like this, right? Now, these clever chefs, because they want to be wealthy and they want to be rich, of course, they don't have the gold bar, they would create something that looked like it. So, Stephen, they created this jiaozhi, right? And when you eat it, what is it trying to say?
That you're gonna be rich and everything's gonna be good and you're gonna be healthy.
Exactly. Now, Stephen, you're exactly right. You have to think of the context, right? Everyone was dying all the time, all the time. You're talking about like, 20-year. I mean, you don't really make it out of the 100-year day thing, right? But if people are dying in their 20s, that was just the norm, right? And so the eating this was just symbolic, right? Of like, we want you to be rich because it's not rich is I'm going to put in quotes, right? It's not so much, it is monetary, but it's also survival so you can reproduce, etc., and your family doesn't die out. It was a big deal because pretty much on the daily, people were pretty much perishing from starvation, right? And so this dumpling that we eat and we don't really know about, oh, we don't know this history. Actually, it's more than dumpling. It's a really, really important symbolic thing, right? You're conveying like magic. And also, Stephen, this was created, thousands of years ago. Okay. So you're actually absorbing and eating Asian love and joy and also survival from 1,000 years ago. You probably didn't know that, right? You probably didn't know that, right? But that someone created that because they saw these rich kings, right? Oh my God, these rich kings, right? I would like to be a rich king too, survive. Let's create this, right? So again, for the commoner, and everyone was a commoner back then, right? It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing, not a small thing, right? And we still saw, I guarantee you, in Nigeria, the Chinese family in Chile, the Haitian Chinese family, or the Cuban Chinese, they're eating dumplings right now. They're eating dumplings right now, right? They might not know the origin, but it's been passed down, passed down, passed down. Okay. All right. Another thing is, what is it, Mr. Steven? What's it called?
Noodles?
Yes, noodles. Or mian. I had to hold this Collins response. Mian, audience, mian. Okay. Um, Actually, because it's the sound. That's why I'm saying the mian is the sound. It's two things. Okay. Now, if we're in Taiwan right now, and if it was Mr. Steven's birthday, okay, well, Mr. Steven, you're gonna take all your friends out. You pay, because that's how it does, how they do in Asia. You pay and you buy everyone noodles, right? Actually, you have to purchase your own birthday cake as well. Okay. And the noodles are really long. They're very long. And I was going to have the audience go like this. Okay, excellent. And do this way as well. Okay. Okay. Noodles, long noodles. All right, Mr. Steven, it's your birthday. So if you have long noodles that represent your life, so what are you trying to convey? We want Mr. Steven to have a long.
Life.
Yes. So again, you know what? All over the planet, one in four people right now eating noodles, right? Because we want Mr. Steven to have a long life and a happy life. So again, mian, mian, the sound of it is long life, but also the actual, isn't it a long noodle? Right? And the noodles. So again, when Mr. Steven's eating the noodles with all his friends, what's he trying to say? What's his friends trying to say for him?
That we hope you live a long time.
Yes, yeah. So on birthdays, Mr. Steven, you know what a lot of people eat?
Noodles.
Noodles, yeah. So I bet you didn't know that. But now here's a pop quiz. Okay, now you know the noodles mean long life, right? But do you not see on our plate? What's on our plate?
Dumplings.
So it's Taiwan. It's Mr. Steven's birthday, right? And we have the noodles and we have the dumplings. Now, what are the two things that we want for Mr. Steven?
A long life and like wealthy, rich life.
Now you get it. Now you get it, right? This is so food is not just food, right? Yes, maybe your mom doesn't say to you happy birthday, or I'm sorry, happy birthday, or I love you, right? Because it's not culturally, that's not like normative. But Mr. Steven, your mom makes you a bowl of noodles. Your mom hard makes the dumplings, right? That's hours of work, right? That's service, right? She's trying to give you something, Mr. Steven. Okay. And again, it's not a small thing, right? So when you say, hey, and it's not only is it not a small thing, Mr. Steven, but in Asia, right? East Asia, you don't say hello. You don't say hello. That's not how they do it, right? Because again, thousands of people are starving. The babies don't make it out. Everyone died all the time. Billions moving out of China, right? You know how they say hello? Because they don't say hello in China and Korea and all that. Do you know how they say it?
No.
No, they say, have you eaten yet?
Mm.
Think about it. That's how they say hello. Have you eaten yet? Basic ma, right? That is a huge thing because everyone's starving to death, right? So it's like it's a conveyance. Are you surviving? Are you okay? Have you eaten yet? Right? If you haven't, then sometimes you take them out to eat, right? Again, that's showing love and Asian joy to you, right? So again, it's not a small thing. It's so big that it's the actual greeting of hello, right? That's a pretty big. Okay, that's pretty big. Okay. All right. To a billion people. Now, this is a what? Mr. Steve, what is it?
A fish.
It is a fish. It's a you. Can we say it with me? You.
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 Okay. Now, you may not know this, but in Chinese dialect, you get the sound of you made it with me. You the sound, right? Did you know that it means long life? It means very agile, going through life, wealth, lots of variation, right? So the sound of it, not the word, but the sound of it, right? It sounds like navigating well, life well, exploring and doing great things, right? So Mr. Steven, don't you want your child to navigate life well? Don't you want your child to actually learn and to be agile? And if there's any kind of issues, they'll go around it, above it. Don't you want that for your child?
Yeah, I want him to do good.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Steven, then you're going to get him some steamed fish and you're going to say, eat it. I'm gonna eat it. You're gonna have some steamed fish, and has soy sauce on it. It's steamed, and yeah, it's a long life, right? I know this is crazy, Steve, but in Vietnam, they fight for the head. They fight for the head, right? Because again, there's also symbolism the fish, like the parts you eat as well, right? I know that heads are scary in the United States, but actually it means like you're head of the household and it has nutrients, and again it's like very nutritious. Like a fish is very nutritious, all the parts, right? So again, every part is just so important, right? And again, so take out your son. We're gonna have you, okay? All right. This is called Niangao. Now, Niangao is also means year, and it's actually like very sweet. It's actually, but I would say, Mr. Steven, lightly sweet, not deeply sweet, but lightly sweet. Okay, it is a light. Oh, it's tapioca balls, right? Have you had a boba drink? Have you had a boba drink?
Yeah, I have.
All right, it's like a boba. It's like a big boba drink. Okay, but that squishy part, the tapioca part, made of rice, and actually it actually is very not sweet. Like I would say lightly sweet. Okay. Now you would actually eat this at the New Year, something sweet, okay? Because you're going into the new year, right? And you want to eat something sweet because you're going in, I want to have something sweet thing. So it's kind of like a wish for the future, right? I'm wishing for something. And now we talked about those gold bars, right? Or you saw they're like big little sticks, but also dumpling gold bars. But you know what those also look like? Because not everyone was rich enough like the king to have those huge dumpling gold bars or the big old. They had little silver nuggets, still little tiny gold nuggets. What did it look like?
Like coins?
Yeah, yeah, it looked exactly like this, like coins like this. So when you're getting a nian gao, what are you trying to say? You're getting sweetness, but you're also getting
Money in the next year?
yes. Yeah. So it's very common. Stephen, it's so common to say, I hope you are rich next year. I hope your life is good next year. I hope you're healthy. That is actually a greeting. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm talking about 1 billion people. 1 billion people right now are saying, I hope you're rich next year. I hope you're healthy next year. They probably don't even know the origins, but we talked about the origins. That's why they say it, right? And they're eating this like sweet little thing because next year, right? And again, Stephen, you got to think about China. Everyone's dying, so like a lot of people didn't make it to the next year. So it's like a hardcore wish, like you're gonna make it, okay? And it's not a small thing, okay? And you kind of like, and also during Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year, you actually, Stephen, well, you're gonna go to your mom's house, you're gonna go to your aunt's house, you're gonna go to your grandparents. It's kind of like a traveling of family as well. And when you go to family, you know what you're gonna give them? What are you gonna give them? Because you can buy it at Costco. They look just like the three things we talked about. What are you giving them?
Dumplings,
Huh?
fish, and noodles?
Yes. And actually, if you ever after this, I want you to TikTok Costco China for put down New Year's, right? It's like literally prepackaged huge gargantuan packages, right? Of these things, right? And you have to, when you visit your grandparents, you got to give them this, right? Like it is a must, right? And so you're gonna buy, and then when they come to your house, because you're supposed to also have your own gathering, they will bring it to you, right? So definitely please go on the Costco TikTok and look at the items because they're pretty fun. They're pretty fun. Okay. All right. Now we talked about it, Stephen, how like, oh my goodness, oh the sound, like the shape, right? The shape of the egg rolls, right? Even now, actual things symbolize things. Now, Stephen, can you read this for me?
Yeah, seaweed symbolizes wealth and fortune. Lotus seeds, a blessing for many children and a healthy family. And bamboo shoots represent longevity.
All right, Mr. Sim, thank you so much. Now, have you been to a Chinese restaurant where you got like free cucumbers?
I don't recall.
Okay, well,
Maybe I did.
you have to go to a Chinese restaurant sometimes they're a little more authentic. Right? Okay, now not to scare you, okay, but the seaweed, if you in the ocean, remember we talked about it's the sound, it's the shape, but it's also the activity of the item, right? Well, seaweeds they keep growing exponentially in the ocean, right? Now, we what do we want, Stephen, for your wealth? We want you to
Grow forever.
yes, that's why during Chinese New Year and also other times you eat seaweed, right? You eat in Korean restaurants, you eat in Japanese. This is a standard, right? But actually, it has a behind it there is actually a feeling, right? And like also a purpose. Okay. Now, lotus seeds. Okay, I'm not going to scare you, Mr. Steven. I'm not going to scare you, but I will scare you now. Lotus seeds are everywhere. They have like a bazillion, I'm not a farmer, but they have a lot of sprout thingies. So, yes, they would like you, Steven, to have 16, 18, 20 kids. Steven, that might be scaring you, but they say, again, this is the tradition. As many lotus seeds you eat is how many children you have. So that's if you want to have 15 children, you gotta eat 15 lotus seeds. Now, Stephen, is that okay?
If other people want to have that many, they can. That's how many they get to eat. I'll eat less.
Okay, well, it's a 16 to 20 thing. type of deal. It is actually put in front of you at Chinese restaurants all the time. Oh, also, now bamboos. Bamboo shoots are one of the funniest and also most awesome like plants on earth. They are survivors. They keep growing in no water, whatever, like very little water. Like they grow everywhere, a little water, a lot of water, right? But they just keep going and going and going and going, which means, Mr. Steven, when I'm serving you bamboos, what do I want for your life?
For it to keep going and going and going.
Yeah, you got to think about the past. Everyone plop died at, I'm 13, pretty much they died at 15. It's the common thing, like it was an everything thing, people didn't really make it out into the 20s, right? And so the bamboo shoots is important, right? It's a testament of survival from the past, right? All right, hot pot. Now, Mr. Steven, you're in Fresno right now, correct? Fresno?
Yep.
Have you been to this restaurant called J-Pot?
I have not. I've been to other hot pot restaurants though.
Okay, well, did you know the origin of hot pots?
I don't.
So hot pot origin is actually every single item represents something. Long life, health, fertility, fortune, kind of like all the different ones, right? Represent the spice factor, all these things. Spicy because life is a good and bad. The front is this equal to the end. I can't go over. That's a whole another lecture. Just do hot pot, okay? Every single item like actually matters, right? So again, people would order that. Do you see that fish there? Right? Do you see that a bamboo there? All those things matter, right? And so again, that's its own 1 hour lecture. Okay. But during Chinese New Year or a TED festival or Lunar New Year or the various names, it is common, Mr. Steven, to go to hot pot. It's very common, right? You go as a family because it's always a family event. We all eat together, and it's like, and again, I really want you to think about the past as well. Like everyone was starving, and sometimes you just had to communally eat, and people still do it now for joy. But sometimes not enough to eat for everybody. We're just gonna share, and we're gonna have just like one scoop, and it was a thing. It's a survival thing, right? And you don't want to eat all of it sometimes because it's communal. And again, all over the world, I was in Morocco and we ate communally. It was a huge pot. Everyone had a spoon, and we just come. And that has to harken back to back in the day. Probably no one had any food. We're gonna all eat one scoop together, right? So again, of course, now we have there's individual pots at J-Pot, but it's a big thing. It's a big thing. So a lot of international students, they feel so lonely and kind of like just disoriented and when they come to the United States, one of the first things they do is, they gather their friends and they have hot pots, right? Because it harkens at all the Chinese New Years that they remember from the past. It's a soothing thing, right? And again, they're looking at dates. Dates are sweet into the next year. So it's not a small thing, okay? Candy. Okay. So, Mr. Steven, generally during this time, we really like you to actually have something sweet, right? And into the next year, of course, you get the hongbao, which is the red envelope. You get money, straight money. Generally, if you're like an 8-year-old, $20, and give you. So you remember we talked about Christmas and Thanksgiving together, right? Basically, like these kids are like their serotonin's like a million because they're holding like $15-$20 bills. They're like, oh my God, right? It's like amazing. Okay. So there's like crazy time. It's like it's like a steroid thing, okay? A serotonin. So while they're holding these things, right? The elders have to give the children each hongbao, and it kind of always sticks my father because you give a hongbao to everyone who's not married. So if your aunt is a 65-year-old not married, you got to give her one too. Okay. So those are the rules. Those are the rules, right? And again, if you do that Costco TikTok, you'll see that these are packaged, right? And then you purchase them, right? And so you have to try one of these things because each thing has a huge symbolism, right? But at the end of the meal, you don't have to finish it. You can just taste it. For my pre-diabetic, audience members, you can taste it, and then that takes it to the next year. So that's it. I want to say ni hao, gong hei fa choi, which is to you, Stephen. I want to say happiness. I hope your next year is great, right? So that's what I just said. And I want to say Happy New Year, right? It's the year of the snake. So I want to do a call out. Steven, I need to go to call outs. Okay. I want you guys all to go to a restaurant, okay, with your family. And I want you to eat all the foods that we talked about, right? And I want you to talk about the foods and what it matters and what it means to be together. And I want you to have you, right? And I want you to say it. I want you to have a golden springer bar, which means wealth. I want you to have noodles, long life, right? So that's what I call out, right? And again, Happy New Year and have a wonderful New Year's.
Thank you, Dr. Bond, for sharing all that information with us and sharing all of your knowledge about food and the holiday. I learned a lot, and I hope all of our students learn a lot from when they have the chance to view this video.